Gearheads, welcome to Speed City F1, our post-qualifying show. And this is Jon Massengale. Very excited to have you with us. And Jonathan Green is with me. Mr. Green, how are you? Hey, Jonathan Green. Jonathan's having a little trouble getting connected. We'll be with him in just a moment, but we just saw Carlos Sainz connect his first pole of the season, and the first team Ferrari becomes to have both drivers on pole this season, because Leclerc's been on pole before. So fantastic race, fantastic qualifying for Carlos Sainz and the Ferrari team. Wow, they're picking up where they left off in Austin last week, and they looked incredibly fast there. So Carlos Sainz with a 1:15.946 lap. Max Verstappen right behind him with it by 2.25 tenths at 1:16.171. And Lando Norris in third, just behind Verstappen, actually, with a 0.310. And Jonathan Green, do we have you, buddy?
You do. Hi, how are you?
I am doing great. I was just excited for Carlos Sainz, his first pole of the season.
Well, to me, that was the best qualifying of the season, too. That had everything. And how about the battle between... I mean, I'll tell you what, when we get to Abu Dhabi do, remind me and say, Johnny Green, Mexico, is that the reason Haas are six? And I'm going to go, yes, it is. Sonoda blew it.
Yeah, that's so true. That session where both Haas cars went through and both RB cars did not, that is huge. It's exactly what you're saying. But yeah, Sonoda's crash, that's a huge deal. It could have potentially kept Lawson
for a top 10.
Yeah, could have kept Lawson off there. So, yeah, that's a big deal for the mid pack there for the Haas and RB team.
And I hate to say it, but despite the loyalty of the Mexican fans, I'm afraid Perez just isn't cutting it. And when Red Bull lose the Constructors' Championship, there's only one man to blame.
Yeah, it's so true, Jonathan. I honestly, I really don't understand it. I mean, look, this weekend was not the weekend you had. Once you're here, you can't, you know, if you get to Mexico, you can't, let Checo off the team. But there's been plenty of chances all season long. I don't understand it. F1 is all about performance, and he is not delivering.
Well, I would say this. Ironically, we haven't really heard from Perez, but we've heard a lot about Verstappen saying no grip at the front, no grip at the back. And we've heard Perez saying there's not much grip out here. And then he went forward at turn 12 and missed his braking point. I think the combination of the Red Bull package as is versus and the altitude change and the low grip and therefore the lack of downforce also means that the Red Bull performance is kind of ordinary. But Max again is over achieving with that package, and Perez potentially could be where it's at.
You just summed up the story of the season. Max is overachieving; he's outdriving the car, and Perez is underdriving the car. I mean, that's it for Red Bull right there. That's their season in synapses.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But I tell you what a resurgence for Ferrari! And I know you know the points from Austin because we were just there last week. Ferrari are right in the hunt for the constructors, With Piastri out, that was another big shock. I mean, what on earth? McLaren should be at least both cars in the top 5.
Yeah. With Piastri out in Q1, I don't understand it. But yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, we could easily see Ferrari pass Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship this morning. It's only 8 points difference, 496 for Ferrari and 504 for Red Bull. So you could easily, I mean, honestly, I really expect that to happen because with Checo starting so low and Carlos and Leclerc in 1 and 3, I don't see how that doesn't happen.
Now, Russell started from pit lane in Austin and got up to 6. Perez is going to have to do something similar, but this is so much less easy to overtake on. And the grip levels are tough. This is a completely... We saw a lot of side-by-side action at Austin, but that's the nature of the circuit. This is not the nature of this circuit. It's all about turn 1 and potentially coming into the baseball arena.
Well, I tell you what, the one thing that's super exciting to see is the fans in Mexico. They are maybe the most enthusiastic fans on the calendar because watching the fan reaction is just when Checo and Pato Award, who did an FP1 on Friday, I mean, they have just been electric. The fans excited for the Mexican drivers. You gotta love it.
Yeah. I mean, they're, as you know, when it comes to soccer, like the Argentinians, they are absolutely crazy in their fandom. And they haven't had, we're at the Pedro and Hermano Rodriguez, who were the great Mexican duo brothers from the 60s. But really, it's been pretty scant. Esteban Gutierrez still around with Mercedes, but not in a car. Obviously, Checo. But it would be great if Pato Award did come to Formula One, and there's no reason with that one-off yesterday on Friday showing that he's more than capable. These guys would go nuts.
Yeah. Well, ironically, Bob Varsha is not with us, and the irony is because he's in Mexico and he's actually doing some work at the Grand Prix, but he's going to be with us tomorrow. But Bob's not with us, but Chris Medland is with us. I heard his mic light up. Mr. Medland, how's it going, buddy?
It's good. I like the way you say that, like this isn't work. I mean, we love our jobs, but you guys are working too right now, aren't you?
Yes, we are. We absolutely. I've been prepping, and yes, I am working, Chris. Working hard.
There we go. I've just made
hardly working,
which is pretty busy, actually. I might annoy someone here. I don't know if I'm able to. I'm going to try. Laurel Meckies I've got here. Fairly big impact on the left rear with that crash. Any worries about needing to change components and any penalties?
Honestly, we haven't seen the car yet, so a bit early to say. Let us see the car, and we'll see after. It was a fairly big hit, so you never know what sort of surprise you're going to see when the car gets there. But we, of course, will try everything to be able to start from the grid.
And do you think it left a bit on the table for you guys, though? Were you looking at Q3 today, or did you actually still end up roughly where you thought you'd be?
No, we thought we had the pace for Q3 today. Honestly, I think if Yuki closes this lap and Liam, who is behind, and close this lap, we think we are good enough for Q3. So obviously it's a bit unfortunate, but it's what it is. We have been very fast all weekend, so it's always going to be disappointed to miss out on Q3. But it's the hard part of this game, and Yuki was pushing very hard. Unfortunately, the fact that we ended up in the wall with him also had a knock on defender on Liam, but it's we'll fight tomorrow. It's obviously tough in the context of the battle with our direct competitors, but it's motor racing, so we'll give it a good go tomorrow.
Yeah, good luck. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, Chris, we were just talking about before you jumped on about how huge that was, that Q2 where both Haas cars went through and both of the RB cars didn't in the championship. I mean, the implications are huge.
Yeah, big time. And I will admit that was one of those stupid questions that I asked midway through the paddock trying to dodge people. I can tell you it's crazy down here with trying to pick a line that's not going to bump into anyone. And of course, they were quick enough to get to Q3. Yuki Tsunoda, I think, was third in both FP1 and FP2 and put some really quick laps in FP3 as well. So it really did look like, at least on his side of the garage, he could have been a threat for kind of, the top 8 maybe. I know the top 6 quite often knocking out, but Mercedes might have been looking worryingly at what RB had been capable of up to now this weekend. So, yeah, silly for me to say, was that where you thought you might be? Because everything that went before did suggest that at least one of those RBs should have been in the top 10.
Well, I do love it how whenever drivers get their laps eliminated, like we had last week in qualifying, every driver said, "Oh, I had a great lap. I was on a perfect lap. I was on it, no matter what, even if they hadn't completed sector 1." But yeah, hey, Greeny. I mean, look,
yeah,
this has big implications. We're talking about this between Haas and RB, but it's so tight. We got plenty of season left, plenty of races left for them this could go to the very end of the season.
Yeah, I think it will. But, you take advantage where you can get it. Like I said, it's not an easy place to overtake. And I do think that they've certainly set themselves up with the Haas boys for at least one of them scoring good points, and more importantly, controlling where RB are, because really that's all that matters to them in this race. They're not going to win the race, but if they can hold off RB and maintain that sixth place, then it's job done.
Yep. Hey, Chris.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in on that. That's a very good point in that Mike Crack was asked about that a race or two ago, that Aston Martin have been able to just focus on their own kind of races because they know that Haas and RB are watching each other. Neither of them are realistically able to close that gap to fifth in the Constructors' Championship. They're fighting over sixth. So even though they both have cars that arguably are quicker than the Aston Martin now, they don't really worry about the Aston Martin and what Aston Martin might do, because that's not their race for the rest of the season. Their race is with each other. So yeah, it's quite funny how weirdly you're not watching teams always go for the best result they can get overall in a Grand Prix. At this part, the business end of the season, you're watching them get the best result they can get compared to their main rivals.
Yeah.
And aren't you guys just expecting both Haas cars to make it into Q3? I mean, I was watching and Magnussen was on a late last lap in Q2, and I was like, I just said, well, he'll get up there. It's become the norm now. It feels like that's where they belong, doesn't it?
Certainly does, especially Hulkenberg.
Sorry, we're leaving it to each other there, Johnny. But yeah, you're right. And Hulkenberg's a good point, and I don't think he quite got it together. Saw an onboard moment of his Q3 lap where he nearly lost it in the stadium section, so that's why he's ended up to 10th. But Magnussen seems to have just stepped up a little bit the last couple of weekends. Certainly on a Saturday, hasn't he? He's really kind of matched Hulkenberg in qualifying and not been making mistakes in qualifying. I know he was annoyed actually coming here that the strategy wasn't right, essentially, on his side of the garage on Sunday in Austin. And that's why he missed out on points, whereas Hulkenberg did score. But yeah, it's been good to see both of them in the frame, whereas we had been kind of used to Hulkenberg pulling out the special laps and Kevin dropping out in Q2.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I put that to me. One of the things I put in my notes, Hulkenberg K-Mag ahead of Hulkenberg again. But hey, I want to shift to McLaren because, all season long we've been talking about Checo and how he's not been holding up his end of the bargain on the other side of the garage. And here we have Lando in third and Piastri down in 17th. I mean, I expect him to come through, but now that this Constructors' Championship is such a tight battle, Greeny, I'll start with you. I mean, Piastri's got to get up there. He's got to do good tomorrow, doesn't he?
Well, yes, is the answer. And for a guy who came into Austin as the form man and previous winner of one of the last few Grand Prix, McLaren winning, the lion's share of the last few Grand Prix, Piastri's just dropped off the face of the earth in terms of his qualifying because he had that track limits at Austin, and now he's nowhere to be found here, and so therefore he's not helping the McLaren cause at all.
Yeah, what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, fully agree. Actually, I heard him speak to the print media actually during the middle of that qualifying session, and he was saying it was painful because he made the error at turn 12 just before you come into the stadium section today, and that meant that he lost about a second. He says, and the lap was comfortably good enough to get him through. But at that stage of qualifying, you should be kind of within your own limits so that a lap that will comfortably get you through isn't at risk of you making a mistake like that. So that's what was a bit strange there, because we had become accustomed to him really impressing and putting together strong performances week in, week out. And there's even periods where we're talking about him kind of taking the fight to Lando a little bit, weren't we? And being a problem for McLaren. And instead now, as you guys rightly say, he's not there to score the points that they need. I still expect him to do better in the race tomorrow than Checo from back there. I expect him to make more progress. And I think we saw it in Austin as well. He's still salvaged a pretty solid result for himself in the Grand Prix. But we were talking about it before qualifying started. What McLaren need, and I think we spoke about it on Sunday night's show after the Grand Prix in the US, they need the big result where maybe Lando can get himself a win and Oscar's in there in the mix, the Ferraris are there in the mix, maybe even a random Mercedes pulls out a good result, and Max gets shuffled back a few places, and then there's a bigger point swing. And not having Oscar in that fight is not only damaging for constructors, but also for any kind of driver's hopes. And it's just badly timed to have the back-to-back weekends like this.
Yeah, really good point, Chris, about him being able to help Lando went, battle for that championship. But all right, hey guys, we got to get a quick break in. But when we come back, I want to talk about a driver who had a good qualifying and really needed it. You're listening to Speed City F1. Back after these messages.
Nice tease.
All right.
Yeah. Who's the tease?
It is Albon.
Bottas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it might be Albon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Good
I'll see if I
tease,
can
though,
find
wasn't
him. It was.
Hey, we got some good comments here on YouTube. Kevin Kelly says that was rather intense with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 exclamation points. There we go. Andy P says felt like a qualifying of attrition right there. Yep. Everyone fighting for survival. Oh, man. Kevin brings up a good point. It's super sad that Carlos is going to Williams. Oh, well, he said, will he ever see Q3 again? Oh, come on, Kevin. Come on, stop it. So it may be true, but yeah, let's see. Mike Bowles is here. Hello, F1 fans. Mike Bowles says, Carlos put a song in my head, and now you all have Under Pressure. But he hasn't made that red team rethink. Man, I thought it might be a 1-2. I thought they were going to end up where they finished in Austin for a minute there.
Can I give you a wacky stat?
Sure.
So I looked at Prix 1 again, and I was talking about Pato O'Ward and how popular he would be if he did come to Formula One, and he is a reserve driver, of course. He was 0.2 off Perez in free practice at a track he's never raced before, at a car he's hardly got in before, and Colapinto was in 1/10 of Perez, and who's the other new kid?
Well, you had Lawson,
anyway,
you had a lot on Friday.
Yeah.
Behrman, you had Antonelli, you had Djokovic.
Antonelli, that was it. Antonelli, yep. Antonelli and Colapinto and Pato were within 0.2 of Perez.
Well, in case you want to run it tomorrow, I've got a chat with Pato from
cool.
yesterday.
Here we go.
Oh, great.
I'm Liam Lawson, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right. Before we went to break, I'd said that we were going to talk about a driver who had a good qualifying and needed it, and that was Alexander Albon. He finished 9th in qualifying today, and he needed it because Colapinto has been outshining him, hasn't he, Jonathan? Hey, Greenie. I think you're.
Hey, sorry about that.
Yep. Yeah, I think you had the YouTube going. I was just saying that Albon's one I was talking about that had a good qualifying session because his teammate Colapinto has been impressing, and Albon I think has been pushing so hard and pushed himself off track a few times into the wall.
Yeah, he did need a good qualifying, didn't he?
Yep.
I mean, it's a potent package, but at least he won't have to fight him next year. I think he's probably more worried about Colapinto hanging around than he is about Sainz arriving. Having said that, after that lap by Sainz, it's going to be pretty at Williams next year, isn't it? Absolutely.
Hey, what do you think, Chris? I mean, could you feel a little tension when you saw Alexander Albon since in these last few days?
I don't know if I'd call it tension, but you're right that he did need that, and just because of the swell of excitement around what Colapinto had done, and coming here and then going to Brazil, it's going to be huge for Franco. The support he's going to have from Argentina that head to Sao Paulo, but even here, the car special livery with the yellow on the back is a huge sponsorship deal that Williams have done there with one of the biggest online trading platforms, I think, behind Amazon. So it's been a real boost to the whole team to have Colapinto in, and Albon's not had the results to then kind of remind everyone, but I'm the guy you've invested in long term, and I'm going to be fighting to be the team leader next year. I think it's a little bit unfortunate yesterday in the crash he had with Ollie Behrman. There was a lot of focus then that, it's all going wrong for Albon. It seems to be him involved again, sort of thing. But with that, the stewards looked at it and the team looked at it, and they said that Alex lifted because he had Behrman not in his way, but in his vision, and he was worried that at the speed he was going that he might get close. And by lifting where it was low grip and the car was loaded up, the rear got away from him. So then, strangely, by trying to slow down, he lost a bit too much control of the car, and in catching it, it drifted him wide into Behrman. And it was just a really kind of unfortunate situation. But to bounce back today, having missed that running with that crash, I think was really, really important for him. And with Colapinto struggling a bit with his setup and not getting out of Q1, it's very well timed. But I've actually just followed Alex down the paddock as well to try and see if I could have got word with him. But sadly, he was surrounded by security, as many of the drivers are when they move around here. They properly make sure no one gets to them because they need to move them around. And it's been a bit tight at times in Mexico City. So he was well protected in that sense. But knowing Albon, I've seen his trainer. He's got, he's content, but he's not overly delighted because they're like, look, the points are tomorrow. And this will mean nothing if we don't capitalize from here. And I think they just want to really walk away from this race with a strong final result rather than just a good Saturday.
Hey, Chris, give us a picture of the paddock in Mexico, and how's it like? What's going on there? And I mean, and can you hear the fans because they're so loud there?
Oh boy, can you hear the fans? I tell you that it's really, really loud in that final stadium section, the Foro Sol. Now, that section is essentially just beyond the end of the paddock. So with the way the pit building is, and we're behind the pit building from the side of obviously the pit straight, it means that if you come out of the pit building and turn to your right, you can see the Foro Sol Stadium, which they put a roof on this year, which has helped contain all the sound as well. So it kind of almost deflects it back towards the paddock. And you've got Red Bull at the end nearest the stadium. Williams and Haas are down the far end, kind of towards turn one, but I can tell it's a long run down to turn one. It's a really cool paddock, actually. It's a little wider, but short. And there's a few palm trees dotted around. It's kind of got some old school feel to it with the way that these trees, but then some really nice new touches too, the way they've spruced this place up. So I'm actually next to a massive sculpture, kind of a Day of the Dead sculpture, because they go huge on that this time of the year here in Mexico City. Loads of things like that, loads of characters walking around, and a huge amount of passionate fans as well. So it's always very lively here. I'd say it's quieter, certainly right now anyway, than what we saw in Austin. But again, because Austin's a slightly smaller paddock, it kind of packs everyone in a bit more. It's a good place to be. You feel the energy and you feel part of it. It's really cool to look one end of the paddock and just see that wall of people in the stadium. And boy, do you hear them every time Checo goes out. Every time he goes through that section, the noise they make is incredible.
Well, like I said, you could hear it all weekend. I mean, man, I saw some of the videos about Pato, with Pato Award. I mean, the crowd has just gone crazy. He had it, and you said it earlier, John, but he had a pretty good session on Friday, FP1. And Chris, what's the feeling in the paddock about how Pato Award did, and also the crowd reaction?
Yeah, he did a very solid job. I actually want to speak more to his team about it, because I did do an interview with Pato yesterday that I think we can play out tomorrow pre-race. But he was personally very pleased, very satisfied with the job he'd done. He said with the chaos and the red flags that it could have tripped them up a bit, but they did all the work they needed to do. And he thinks he did it cleanly. He was being told by the team, do not damage this car. Do not go off. Do not try and go too quickly, because he did end up running the new floor that was on Norris's car today. He got to back two different floors, but there was only one of the new floor. So if he'd have damaged that, nobody was getting it. And with Norris obviously in the title fight, he had to be careful. And speaking of, he's actually walking down the paddock right now doing an interview as we speak. So he's currently on camera and again surrounded by security to make sure that he doesn't get mobbed, because the fans love him here. And I think it was really cool to see. He said he didn't know himself coming back to Mexico City what the reaction was going to be like, and obviously expected everything to be about Checo. But to see the interest he got in himself, he said was amazing. So he was really kind of humbled by that. And I think it has shown, that he will certainly draw in crowds if he ever does get another chance, either in FP1 or certainly if he were to get a race seat at some day in the future.
Well, I just think he's one of the most interesting people in motorsports. When you get to interview him, which I know you did last week, Chris, and I think you said you got him again that we may be able to hear tomorrow. But he's so interesting, and he's just so genuine and frank. One of the audio editors, actually, my son, was saying, "Man, that guy's really interesting." He said he's not a huge fan, but I think everybody realizes how sincere or just an interesting character. Don't you think, Jonathan?
Yeah, I do totally. We interviewed him in Miami, if you remember, where he was, just got out the car as well. And yeah, you're right. His description of what it's like to drive a Formula One was so effusive and, fascinating that you can't help but like the guy. I mean, the only guy he reminds me of in racing is Elio Castroneves.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Hey, I want to talk about Max Verstappen and track limits because came out in Q3 and he was all over the curbs immediately. And in fact, they did a nice slow-mo on F1 TV, and I grabbed it from my background there. But he was clearly both corners off on the both tires off on that one corner, and killed that lap. And I saw who was it? It was Leclerc banging over the curbs too. So I just wonder how much this could play into tomorrow. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I don't think tomorrow will be so much because they'll want to be a bit more careful with the cars. They'll be heavier, so they'll be running a bit lower with the high fuel that they have in there. And you just take a bit more care over the race distance. It's over 70 laps. Whereas in quality, you are looking for every tiny millisecond you can find. And the car's it's lightest, you've got more grip from the tyres, so you can get it to turn in that bit better. But yeah, you're right. Leclerc actually did get his lap time deleted too in Q2, I believe it was. So we were looking out for it then because obviously all the drivers are looking for an advantage. They're looking for the quickest line through there. And that's a curve you can attack on low fuel. But there is a limit to that. There is still the ability to cut the corner. They've got a bollard on the very inside to make sure nobody completely cuts it in that sense, but it just showed you can still manage to do so. So I think everyone did recognise, as your screenshot showed, Johnny, there, that it was quite clear that when Max had done it, having seen what had happened with Charles, that it may well be the same penalty heading his way, or the lap time deleted. I am trying to see if Christian Horner's around at the moment. That's the noise you guys can maybe hear if I keep interrupting on my mic, but there's no sign of him right now. And I'd be fascinated to know his thoughts on kind of Red Bull's day, because I think with the problems Max Verstappen had yesterday, and the fact he did hardly any running in the second session, and he said not much representative running in the first session, that was a heck of a bounce back for them to put him on the front row. But flip side with a checker on the penultimate row, I mean, it's a proper day of two halves for Red Bull, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And while you're tracking him down, Chris, I just want to talk about Alonso and Stroll. Stroll, both sessions he had, because they ended up 13th, 14th. He was pretty much on Alonso's times. He was a 10th off in Q2, and essentially a little bit more than that in Q3. But still, it's kind of where they've landed right now. It's kind of like I was saying about Haas, we kind of expect them, although Alonso's been in the top 10 a lot more lately. But just going down today's qualifying, and that struck me about where the Aston Martins are in 13th and 14th. But Chris, how's it going? I want to just check in with you.
Yeah, I'll keep jumping in if I do find him, but no sign at the moment. As I say, quite a few people need to hide away in this paddock to avoid getting mobbed too much. And I wonder if Christian's doing that. I have sent a message to see if I can dig him out somewhere, wherever he is at the moment, but no sign right now. I did want to say, and I probably should have said this at a much more relevant time, but I know we did talk a little bit about Sainz, and you guys would have been on it earlier, talking about what it'd be like alongside Albon at Williams. But I've just watched, or just as we were coming on air, I watched the onboard of his qualifying lap, and it was insanely smooth. It was beautiful to watch, in the sense that anyone who's watched any of the coverage this weekend will see on board quite often drivers fighting. It's normally on the exit of a corner, getting a bit of oversteer as they're trying to get on the throttle and the lack of grip, and they're fighting the car and trying to stop it from spinning. We've seen some real snaps from a lot, and Charles Leclerc in particular through the middle sector has had a couple of them. But Sainz, none of that at all. Not a single correction. Everything's so smooth, getting on the power, like the car just doing exactly what he wanted, and him finessing it round here. He was clearly just totally at home with it. And I think that's probably one of the best laps I think I've ever seen him produce.
So, Jonathan Green, do you think, I mean, look, we're used to seeing Leclerc do exactly what Sainz did, where he's so quick in qualifying. But do you think that, first of all, it sounds like that the Ferrari car has come together, but do you think that it's suiting Carlos better than Charles Leclerc right now? What do you think? Because we've seen this, a couple times now, that the car looks faster for Carlos.
Yeah, no, I actually just think that Carlos has upped his game. Leclerc is well known for his one-lap qualifying. And I've often said that, obviously the best two qualifiers are Verstappen and Leclerc, I think. It'd be interesting to see Hamilton in the same car as Leclerc. I look forward, as I've said before, to him qualifying against Leclerc, even in their own little world. But I just think Carlos has stepped up. I think he shrugged off all the indecision and second guessing that was being played earlier in the season as to whether he would stay or not. And I think now he's ready to sort of, play his role at Williams, and he's looking forward to the future. And now we're seeing the best of him.
Yeah, I think that's a great assessment. Hey, Chris, we need to get a break in unless you got somebody with your microphone there.
You are good to go right now.
All right, well, let's get a quick break in. We'll come back and we'll see if Chris can get with for us, and we'll also continue to break down qualifying right after these messages. All right, let's see. Hey, welcome, Bill Ricker. Been listening on SiriusXM. Bookmarking the stream to catch up what he missed. Man, he's a loyal listener, just like all you guys are. We appreciate it. Let's see. Joey Vorster says, I like watching Carlos. I hope something works out for Williams. Still can't believe Ferrari dumped him. Yeah, he's making him maybe regret that, isn't he, Joe? Let's see. Kevin Kelly, so the two Ferrari teams are going to beat the two Red Bull teams. He says. Let's see what else. Give props to Hinch. He's doing a really good job. Yeah, Hinch is great. He's very good. We had him on wheel to wheel. I guess last year he was really good. Let's see.
We had him on last week. Post-race, didn't we?
Yeah, that's true. We had him for a quick little interview. I don't know what Jonathan Green, he's got guests over, or else it's the dog. I don't know. Greeny, what are you doing? You're muted. You're muted, Greeny. It's like your first
I'm
time
just
on
about
Zoom.
to tuck into my 4-course meal that Casey's obviously sent over. Not only did he ignore me the other day as my neighbor, but he came hurtling in at Leclerc kind of pace, handbrake turned into the car park and missed me by inches. You're in the way.
That sounds like precision to me.
The neighborly love here is unbelievable at the Oaks.
What's it looking like, Chris?
To be honest, it's looking pretty tough. I think a lot of the team members have tried to stay out of the crowds, and are now they've decamped to engineering earlier. I went to Williams to try and get Valves if he was around, but no sign of him. So, yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm George Russell, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back to this final section of our show. I want to talk about Liam Lawson. Jonathan, it's maybe your favorite subject these days with Liam. And the reason I want to talk about him is because, man, he looked confident in the interview, the post-race interviews and stuff. He just looks like he is in the right spot right now. You're muted, Jonathan, but when you unmute, tell us what you think about that.
Yeah, you talk about a dancer hitting his marks or a boxer making his punches count. That's exactly what Liam Lawson is doing right now. If you remember at Austin, like I said, we set it up last week. It's a two-way battle. Helmut Marko set us up before Austin. They got 6 races to prove, who's the better driver. And that driver will be considered potentially for Perez's job. And I've seen no evidence this weekend that still isn't up for grabs. He's killing Red Bull's chances of winning the Constructors' Championship, which is amazing. And there's no question that both Yuki and Lawson could do a better job up against Verstappen, up against his teammate, Tim Verstappen. But no, to answer your question, Lawson is absolutely, he even apologized, or he said thank you when they completely screwed him.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, what you're seeing him in person, does he have that air of confidence that I'm seeing on the video?
Yeah, I'd say that's accurate. He's been waiting for this opportunity. So I think there's a little bit of kind of pent up energy, wanting to get in the car and race this year. And then when it finally got confirmed, the timing of it meant he had a big gap before he could race. So I think he needed Austin. He needed to get started for that to really flow. But I did notice that from even his first media session in Austin, he was more relaxed and more open than he had been last year. And I don't know if it's just that he'd already done some bits, maybe he felt he knew people a bit more, and he had a little bit of experience from last year about what he was facing, but he did feel just that little bit more kind of himself, to be honest. He wasn't quite so tensed uptight in the media, which is a good thing because, he's a really likable guy. He is not Daniel in terms of his personality, but he has a different and very good personality that he needed to make sure that he was being true to. And I'm glad to see that he has been doing that. To follow up as well, I'm still seeing if I can get anything. I'm told that Christian's in a meeting, so that it's unlikely we're going to get him in the next 10 minutes. But you were just talking about Checo and where we are right now. But I can at least give you a bit of insight from a source in Red Bull who was saying to me earlier this weekend that they're kind of amazed at how little focus and pressure and intensity there's been from the media on Checo's seat because of the job he's been doing and the score he's had. And I'd totted it up actually heading into this race. In the last 13 races, as in race weekends, including sprints, Checo scored 47 points. So his average per race weekend is less than 4 points a weekend in that car. He'd scored 103 from the first 6 rounds, I think it was, heading into after Miami. And even Miami wasn't a great weekend for him, but he did get a 4th in that race. So it's been a huge drop-off in form, and it's been consistent. And there's only been Baku where you could turn around and be like, well, that would have been a better result, but didn't quite go his way. So I think there's real kind of heat within Red Bull, kind of focus, intensity, whatever going on within that says, they're really heavily concerned and almost wanting to see that externally questions asked because they feel like they haven't been. I said one of the reasons it hasn't been, A, everyone wants to get out of here alive, being in Mexico City, but B, is the fact that they stuck with him in August. And at that point, I think a lot of people took it as, then they're not serious about the Constructors' Championship. That they're focused on, this is the guy that's going to give us the best way of keeping Max happy and getting Max across the line in the driver's title. So, and maybe there were commercial reasons too, whatever. But the way he has performed then and since, just the fact that there was no change, it's kind of made everyone a bit indifferent towards it. Like, well, they're just never going to change him until the end of the season. And that's kind of how it still feels now.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like, I've given up asking the question because I don't know what they're, there must be something that we don't know, whether it's commercial or what. What about you, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I've stuck the dagger in on Perez, but I do think that it's true of, journalists as well as normal humans. He's a likable guy. Who wouldn't have dinner with Checo Perez? He's a really good guy, and I think that's partly why everybody kind of gives him the benefit of the doubt. I mean, you would have no problem attacking Verstappen if he was having a lull like Perez is having. And what I mean by that is that Verstappen gives as good as he gets. He's brash. He's straight. When the car's not right, he tells you so. Whereas Checo, very polite, very laid back, very popular. And I do think that we give him the best side of the rub, as it were. We give him, we give him a little bit more leeway, perhaps. And I haven't, because I can see the potential of Lawson and, to be honest, and Tsunoda. And my bigger point is they're going to lose the Constructors' Championship. And in fact, I will say now, 5 to go, they will finish 3rd because Ferrari's form is so good. And that is a lot of money going, into next year.
Yeah. What's happening, Chris? I hear people screaming.
That was the top 3 drivers were just leaving the TV pen, and they were being screamed at by the fans that were trying to line a pathway for them, but they get shepherded through the back of the hospitality units here and through some kitchens, and just a really weird route. But anyone who's listened to our show before will know I've managed to grab a few interviews that way in the past. I think don't know if it was last year or the year before, Daniel Ricciardo we had. It must have been 2 years ago at McLaren, I think, walking through the back of those kitchens. And I'll probably try and pull the same trick tomorrow as well. But there's a lot of security around the top 3 right now. I have just moved away, though, from Red Bull because, A, the crowds are there are huge, and B, I'm told Christian is still in a meeting, which interesting to be in a meeting at this time, so close after the end of qualifying and not be in the debrief. But then maybe, sometimes you just can't avoid a clash like that. But also it may well be that he's actually, in terms of the Max situation, pretty satisfied with the outcomes today and we'll get filled in on what they said in debrief afterwards. So I'll try and find that out later. I'll also mention, by the way, I don't know if anyone's picked up on this because I do talk a lot, but the altitude up here affects even that. So I'm getting out of breath a little bit sometimes when I've got to make long rambling points, because while walking too and talking so much, you just don't get as much oxygen in with each breath, and you do need to kind of stop and get a big gulp in.
Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah, I mean, what is it, like 70% or something like that? It's a crazy number of the oxygen that you normally get. I can believe that. But
yeah,
hey,
you really do feel it up
2,000 feet above sea level is high.
Yeah, it's a long way compared to anywhere else. I want to say it's something like 5 times higher than anywhere else we race. And it impacts the cars a lot as well. It's why tomorrow is going to be so crucial at the start, because if you're stuck behind a slower car, but you don't get them at the start, like everything will overheat because you're not getting as much clean air to the car. And also that air is not as efficient when it's going through all the cooling systems at cooling the car. So you need to make sure you're in an open kind of space. You need to be leading, or you need to drop back from the car in front. That's why quite often the first few laps are really punchy, and then it really spreads out for a while.
Does that, Chris, explain something to me? I get the thin air, and I've experienced it obviously before myself. My sister lives in Colorado, so I get exactly what you're saying. But does it affect overtaking in terms of that lack of air, the amount of air, i.e., it is thinner, by barometer sort of thing? Does it affect how hard it is to overtake? You just explained the aero, obviously, but do you get less aero effect or more?
Yeah, you get less. So you have the car in a high downforce setup, like it's Monaco, for example. But the impact of that downforce is as if you're at Monza. It's like some drivers, even compared to driving in the wet, you get so little grip because the air is not being as effective on the parts of the car, the bodywork, and therefore not pushing it down into the ground as hard, which means the tires aren't gripping as much, which means they slide more. And that's why it's such a challenge here. But also, that means trying to make an overtaking move on the limit, trying to find where that limit is very, very hard. And you're talking low grip as well. So you can't get away with throwing one down the inside and just, seeing if you can keep on the track or not. There's a chance you can lose complete control rather than just slightly run wide. It is an added challenge. We're helped, though, by the fact that the long straight here with a DRS zone, it does allow cars to get close when they're within a certain range, and then you've got a big stop at turn 1, and it's a big wide run to the apex. So that really facilitates it. But that's basically there in turn 4, because if you don't get the move done at turn 1, you're close through the first little section of corners, and you've got another long run to turn 4. Those are the 2 real spots. Other than that, it's kind of followed the leader.
Yeah, and Jonathan,
so if you are the front row, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, you said 2,200 feet. You meant 2,200 kilometers, which is 7,300 feet. And another thing, Jonathan, is that on
meters, not kilometers, just to be clear.
Yeah, right. Yeah, 2,200 kilometers to 7,300 feet.
No, 2,200 meters. 2,200 kilometers would be a heck of a long way up.
Sorry. Yes,
2,200 kilometers.
We both got it wrong, but yes, the 7,300 feet. So we can, like in Colorado, whatever you were. But yeah, we're horrible at the metric system. They've confused us since the grade school. But anyway, the other thing is, Jonathan, you talk about passing, is that the cars, you would think they might be down on power, like a naturally aspirated car would be down on power, but turbocharged cars kind of compensate, maybe not 100%, but they're close to full power, as we're seeing with the really high speeds. We've seen the fastest speed ever in Formula One was Bottas at 231 miles an hour. So, and we saw 217 or something like that today. But we're almost out of time. Jonathan, do you have one more point? I said, Jonathan, we're almost out of time. Did you have one more point?
Yeah, I just wanted, it makes it start interesting. If Austin was interesting, how the Ferraris came through with Verstappen and Norris sort of knocking each other wide. With this long run, could we see a Ferrari potentially have a go for the lead in the first corner or the first 2 laps before DRS?
Well, certainly, yeah. But you're thinking Charles from 4th. Yeah, I think Lando seems very happy with 3rd because you might be some screaming. That's Carlos just waving to some fans. Yeah, Lando's very happy with 3rd because that's historically a good place to be. You get the slipstream from the cars in front and you're away. So it's going to be fascinating because you're going to have Lando attacking Max rather than the other way around in a turn 1, and Carlos in there and Charles in there. Yeah, like the start, you don't want to miss the start tomorrow.
All right. Well, thanks,
No.
everybody. We are out of time, but of course, join us tomorrow. We'll get started. Everything gets started tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, pre-race, race, and post-race. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Jonathan Green, Chris Medland. This has been Jon Massengale. We'll talk to you tomorrow.